Let's put on a hard hat and get a closer look at ArieForce One. What's up guys, Dr. Coaster here on behalf of the Georgia Coaster Connection, and welcome back to another ArieForce One Construction update. Before we get started, I just want everyone to know that all photos and footage included in any of these construction updates are free to use with credit. I'd also like to thank my Georgia Coaster Connection partner Christopher as we gather this content together. I'll link his pages down below. To start us off, no, the title of this video is not clickbait. But let's address everything else going on with ArieForce One and Fun Spot Atlanta in general before we get there. After a long week of working, it was great to make my way back out to the park to check in on ArieForce One and other changes to the park. Last week, we saw RMC continue taking the Raven Truss dive into the sky, while we also saw our first glimpse at the front of ArieForce One's second lead car. This week, RMC has moved even more supports on site, while the Raven Truss dive continues to do its thing. Not to be outdone, Fun Spot is refurbishing a ride and continues to install a new one. Oh yeah, and don't forget the new parking lot. So let's start off right there. Prep for pavement appears nearly complete, and we should be able to park our cars on a fresh new parking lot very soon. And as usual, this isn't a parking lot update, so let's move on. Let's move straight to the back of the park, where we are eagerly awaiting to see the barrel and zero-G rolls attached to the respective portions of the ride. Similar to the last couple of weeks, it doesn't appear like anything is going on here. But RMC tends to out of nowhere surprise us with these kinds of things, so we'll keep an eye on it for sure. I've mentioned previously that there is red and blue track nearby, and I'd imagine we will see that moved very soon, with what we have been seeing in front of the arcade recently. If you missed last week's update, we saw the first supports start to go vertical in front of the arcade. The first of which were right here where the barrel roll and chili dip will be heading. It's expected that this support will join with another one on the backside of the arcade to bridge the two parts of the ride together, similar to what we've seen with the stall. Building on what we saw last week, we can see even more supports in place this week, getting us even closer to seeing this anticipated part of the ride take form. These supports will also join up with other supports seen on the other side of the walkway, and this is likely where guests will pass to and from when heading to the Scream and Swing section of the park. Last week we also saw these supports start to go vertical, but it doesn't seem like much more has happened at the moment. However, just down the midway from these supports, the last of the concrete appears to be poured, and that means the only direction left for ArieForce One to go is up. The other supports are still lying all along ArieForce One straightaway, and even more join them this week. More on that in just a second. The hard hat zone has remained expanded, and I'd imagine that will continue to be the case until we see the ride open. From what I understand, the original midway in the center of the park will reopen and the Ferris wheel will remain where it currently is, even though they are both currently closed due to construction. Now for those additional supports that I just mentioned, because this seems to be pretty big news. I know we've all had a lot of questions on what the station is going to look like, and these supports seen here seem to be for just that. We might get our first glimpses of the station in the near future. As promised, I haven't forgotten to circle back to the beginning of the video, but before we get there, let's take a quick peek over at what is going to be the new set of flyers, because this week we can see the whole perimeter of it formed. Progress here has been slow and steady, but that's totally understandable given how busy the park has been. While the flyers are eventually coming, the park is also taking time to refurbish another flat ride with the Spider. If you've seen this torn down recently, don't worry, it's only temporary. Now, I'm a dummy content creator and forgot to get any shots of this, so a big thank you to my buddy Chris over at Thrillquirk for sending these my way. Be sure to go follow him on Instagram. Okay, now, let's talk about why this update is dropping so much later than I usually upload them. And that's because I was recently contacted by Fun Spot and invited into the hard hat zone. And yes, this is me. Up to this point, I've never shown my face on camera before. You can find glimpses of me on other coaster channels as I've traveled around the country with some friends, but I've had some awesome interactions with you at parks, so I'm looking forward to hanging out with you more in the future. Don't ever be afraid to come up and say hey. In recent weeks, I had been busy grabbing footage from the roadside of the coaster, so I was extraordinarily thankful to Fun Spot for this opportunity. They found my videos on their own and reached out to me, which is just mind-boggling. Never would I have imagined that heading out to the park with a camera phone to record video of a roller coaster I was excited about would lead to all of this. Or the community I've built on this channel. I've had so many great interactions with y'all online, and it's all because of this coaster, so this moment was pretty surreal for me. Alright, while I was just blabbering on, you probably saw some pretty awesome close-ups of the coaster. So now, how about the future side of the station that I just mentioned earlier? I know we just talked about it, but being able to stand on its future foundations and look up at the lift hill is just awe-inspiring. RMC recently finished the stairs and putting the guard on the chain lift, while they continue to install other components of it as well. Seeing this lift from this angle really puts it into perspective as to how far you're going to climb before you get sent straight through this layout. While I was behind the fence, I also couldn't help but notice how much track is also on site. I've talked about the supports a lot, but geez. We're probably only one shipment away from having everything here that's needed to finish the ride. While we're on the topic of the layout, I can already hear you screaming into my headset. Where's the Raven Truss dive? So here it is. This week we saw track get added to it for the very first time, and we are finally getting to see the profile of that dive down to the ground for the first time. While it's incomplete at the moment, I'd imagine we'll see this finished very soon. And when this element gets completed, all the track for the first part of the ride is complete, leaving only the outer banked airtime hill and straightaway left. The straightaway is the most simple part of the ride to put together, so once they've got these complex things finished up, expect this team to head down the home stretch very quickly. Just think about how quickly they went vertical with the stall and lift hill, and how quickly RMC finished up that section behind the arcade. It only took a couple weeks. Walking in and around ArieForce One structure really gave me a newfound appreciation for this ride, if that was ever even possible. RMC is doing such an incredible job putting this together, and after seeing the snap that these elements have up close, guys, we are in for one wild ride. It's gonna be huge. Thank you all for watching. That was the 20th of many ArieForce One construction updates to come. And holy cow, have we already made 20 of these? Wow. Anyways, if you don't want to miss out on more construction updates like this, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, as many more of these will be coming out leading up to the opening of the ride. If you haven't already, then also be sure to follow Georgia Coast Connection over on Instagram, your home for all things ArieForce One. If you're feeling inclined, then you can follow me as well at Dr_Coaster. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, and at the parks.